So I'm so impressed with all the folks joining us. So thank you very much. We were just, we're going to open our regular session now, but we were just in executive session to discuss issues related to collective bargaining or litigation if an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining or litigating position of the public body, specifically school secretaries and cafeteria workers. But before we go, what we're going to do tonight is we're going to reorganize the agenda slightly differently, and we're going to have the school reopening update first, and then we're going to go into the public forum or the listening session. But actually, and we're going to beam people over. So if you would like to make a statement regarding the reopening of school, if you could pretty please raise your hand in the little box and we will have you come over. But as Jess said at the beginning, if you could please make sure that your label has your full name, that would be very helpful, and not just the phone number. But actually, if it's not related to the reopening and anything else, does anyone have anything for public input? But I should read the statement. And that is public input. Citizens at this time may address the committee on items of school business not on the agenda. The committee will take such items under advisement without action at the meeting during which the item is presented. So do we have any? Okay, at the last meeting, school agreed. I will take comments via video. Chris, did you want to beam over for now? Okay, but we will beam people over. Okay.
Just for everyone on the call, beaming people over means we're putting you on video.
Thank you, Leah.
We are not disintegrating your molecules, putting you up here and then trying to put you back together again, because that would be fun.
Owen has ordered that machine. It's on back order, so that's just.
I've got my own window. All right, so we will go out of order. So actually, Jeff, do you want to? We'll go to old business first and discuss a reopening.
Sure, Madam Chair. Thank you. So I want to just give you a quick update. Since our last meeting, we've been real busy with our reopening, and we started our reopening committee in our meeting. So I want to just go over kind of a timeline of where we are and what we're going to be doing. So we received our guidance, as you know. We've gone through that process of reading through that and highlighting some of the key points in that. We did surveys of both the staff and families. So as I said in the multiple emails to families, this is the first survey that they'll get of at least 3 over the summer. So this was really a baseline survey to get a sense of what people were thinking in terms of in-person opening. And we did the same thing with staff as well. So we wanted to get some initial thoughts to see what people were thinking. And then there'll be a more comprehensive survey that comes out at the end of next week for families to get even a greater sense of what they're thinking. So we had unbelievable participation in both of the surveys. So our staff survey, we had over 80% of staff. And it was really a simple question of, based on the recent guidance, are you planning on coming back to work? Essentially for September, just to get a sense of where people were. So we had 92% of our staff, and this was teachers, secretaries, teaching assistants, custodians, everybody. 92% said yes. 8 were unsure, 8%, and then it was 91.7, and then 0.3 no. So we had one staff member who had told us prior that person could not come back, and we had talked about that during the budget process as well. So, great response there, 327 responses. Then we did that with the parents as well, just trying to get a sense of where people were. Given the latest guidance, what are your thoughts? And then we explicitly put in the email 3-foot physical distancing. Are you planning on sending your child back to school? So we had 1,830 responses. So that's almost creeping around 90% of our parents and families. 78% said yes, that they wanted their students back in-person learning. 18.5% were unsure, and 3.5% said no. So again, in a whole host of comments, we got, I want to say probably almost 700 comments as a part of that too. So I will, we're going to put those together in a spreadsheet so we can take a look at those. But some real thoughtful comments and concerns that people had that we're taking into consideration. I think, you know, one of the things that we need to be clear about is that we're going to let the science and the medical world guide us in this decision, in this process. So if we have issues around spikes in the virus or local spikes in the virus, then that's going to really be a big determination of what my recommendation to the school committee is going to be in August about what we do. So we're looking at the science. We're following that right now. I had a meeting with the commissioner today in that small group of DESE that's working with DESE senior staff. The doctors that are on their team, and that's, you know, some of the best in the world, are saying that they feel comfortable with kids going back to school with the 3 to 6 foot physical distancing, you know, with all the safety parameters that we've talked about that are all in the guidance. And, you know, that's where they're talking, that's what they're talking about right now. So we, you know, we've looked at, you know, some of the issues that we had. We were told that we had to go through and make an assessment in our buildings of whether or not we could fit students in and fit teachers and staff in, looking at a 3 to 6 foot physical distancing. So we did that manually first, going through every building, and then DESE actually gave us a computer program that had all of our data already uploaded into it, and we were able to plug in size of rooms, et cetera, number of kids, and it came out that we could hold in person with a 3 foot. If we go above a 3 foot physical distancing, we just can't physically, in terms of the buildings, have in-person learning every single day with all kids in at the same time. So we went through that process. We've purchased a whole lot of PPE. Michael has been doing a really good job going through that and purchasing it. So I want to just share some of the items that we've purchased so far. So we have, we've purchased a lot of hand sanitizer, 840 gallons hand sanitizer, plus some smaller 8-ounce and 16-ounce hand sanitizers for classrooms only. We've purchased automatic dispensers, batteries that we needed for our biohazard containers. So we have to have special biohazard containers that anything that is taking out of the nurse's office that may be considered COVID-19 related has to go in medical waste. So we had to get special containers for them, and it's an automatic cover that closes. So we got all that as well. We have crowd control wall barriers that we've installed in various places throughout the district. Every office has every desk and every receptionist has a plexiglass shield in front of them to welcome the public. We have a whole lot of disposable masks. We've had very separate orders because everybody in the country is trying to buy these. We had to get from very different vendors. So we have one order of 3,000, one order of 1,800, one order of 50, one order of 200, one order of 350. So all different vendors getting masks, both children's size masks and adult size masks as well. We have isolation gowns. We have over 800 face shields that we can have for staff that we're going to give. And you know, some of the things that come up and some of the concerns around, and you know, those of you that know that I have hearing loss in one of my ears, and I do a lot of lip reading when I have conversations, and I found out myself how difficult it is to do that when everyone has a face mask on. So we need to be cognizant of our kids that have some of those issues as well. So we're looking at getting the face mask to have the clear front so that kids will be able to see teachers' lips as they're speaking, and help them out in that way as well. We have isolation gowns. One of the requirements is to have a separate room in case we have suspected a student or a staff member that has COVID-19 symptoms. We don't have that space. So we purchased medical tents that we're going to be having outside each school. One has come in. We're still waiting on 4 other ones. The N95 masks, which are going to be required for nurses, we've purchased over 400 of those. The gloves, over 5,000 pairs, over 3,000 pediatric masks. Lots of supplies for cleaning. I mean, lots and lots and lots of supplies for cleaning that we have that are approved by CDC and recommended by CDC. We've looked at desk dividers. So one of the concerns on a statewide level is that elementary schools have gone away from rows of desks and have gone to tables for more collaboration with teaching and learning. So that becomes a problem when you're looking at physical distancing when classrooms are outfitted in tables. So one of the solutions to that is putting desk dividers in. We're looking at ordering over 1,200 of those so that all kids that are in a table setting would have one of those. We're just still looking at samples. We have lots of vendors that have some really great products, but we want to look and choose and get feedback from staff on what the best one would be. So we're still looking at that as well. One of the things that we've talked about too is that we've looked at high hospital grade filters for our HVAC systems in our univents in our schools. So we have those on order as well, so that we're replacing our normal filters, which we typically do in the summertime, to a much higher grade of filter that would be hospital grade filter, the same one. So we've, at this point, we're looking for reimbursement through the CARES Act on some of this. We haven't gotten reimbursement on everything. We have on some. At least we've sent it for reimbursement. We haven't gotten the reimbursement yet. But right now we're a little bit over $84,000 spent in these materials. So we're still ordering and we're still making sure that we have the best materials out there. But that has been coming in, and everyone in the country is trying to do the same thing. So I know that we're in good shape because we got ahead of a lot of these orders. So that's been part of what we've been doing in the reopening. Then we started our committees last week. So we have 5 committees, 1 for each building, and then a district-wide advisory as well. So we have over 80 people participating. So we have all teachers, staff, principals, central office, parents, school committee members, Board of Health members, kids, you name it. We have a whole group of people that are working with us to try to develop our 3 different models. Last week, we developed and worked on our remote model. We felt that was a great place to start, coming off the remote learning of the spring, and really make an assessment and reflection of what went well and all the things we had to improve on in that process. So we felt like that was an emergency remote session. So now we had to get better. Now we have time to plan for that. And our teachers and our staff and everyone involved in these committees did a great job. So they did that planning at the building level. And then we had a district advisory on Tuesday where each grade level or each building presented their plan. And then we gave them feedback. And then Christine, Michael, and Mary organized some breakout groups and facilitated the conversation. I was able to bounce around in all of those and get some feedback as well. And then we switched right over to the hybrid model, which we worked on this week. And then they'll get feedback on the hybrid model next Tuesday. And then Wednesday, they'll probably still work on the hybrid model a little bit more, and then look at doing the in-person model next Thursday. And then the following Tuesday, we'll meet as a district advisory again and give additional feedback and start putting that plan together in earnest. So it's really been a collaborative process. I know that there are some places that got their plans out very early. It was a very, very top-down process. We wanted to really involve everyone in this so that everyone had a voice in developing these 3 distinct models that need to be submitted to the state. So the key dates coming forward in terms of the reopening: on July 31st, we'll need to do a quick survey to the state and submit that to them on kind of what a quick overview of what our plans look like in the 3 models and what plan we may be leaning toward at that point. It's not binding. And then on August 10th, we need to submit our full report and our full plan for the opening of September, in which we will have to have a designation of what we're going to do for the opening of school. So right now, we're still working hard on trying to get everyone in school, but we know that things change. So it was overwhelming, I think, for both students, for both staff, and for parents that they want in person. We certainly want in person, but we're not going to sacrifice the health of students and staff to force an in person. I mean, you see the nonsense coming out of DC, not giving us our funding if we don't go. I mean, that's just crazy talk. So, we're not going to let any of that nonsense down there decide what we're going to do. We're going to make sure that with the help of the Board of Health, guidance from DESE, your support and your decision making, all of us, we're going to decide what's best for Medfield, and take all that input from teachers and parents as well, and really guide that decision. But it really has to be a decision grounded in medical science and not, politicizing whether or not kids get into school or not, because that's not what we're all about. So that piece is important. So because we have to have that in on August 10th, I'm asking you to consider to add a meeting in August, another school committee meeting. We already have the 10th and the 27th, I think, as meetings, but if we could look at your calendar and see if you could add August 6th, which would be the Thursday before the due date. I'd like to do a presentation of what our plans are that evening and hopefully get a vote of support on that from you folks. We are waiting for guidance as well. So some of the frustration that we shared, and I actually had an opportunity to share it with the commissioner today, is that I've been telling you and the community, and we've all been doing this as superintendents, that 80 to 85% of this is going to be mandated. And we're starting to have that feeling like we were in March again, where kind of everyone is kind of doing their own thing, and it's not really, the only part that's being mandated is the medical piece, and the instructional stuff is really looking like it's up to us again, which is not what the message we had for the first month and a half of this process. So a little frustrating on that end, but we are getting guidance. We should be getting some next week. Transportation guidance, we have not gotten that yet, so it's kind of hard to put your plan together if you don't know if you can bus kids or not. I know that the draft that we were able to see did have one student per seat in it, so we have a 72 student bus, and that limits you to 24 or 28 kids. So that's going to be an issue that we're going to have to work through with multiple sessions and multiple runs of the bus. I think that's why I wanted to ask that question to parents about what they thought about bus transportation. Right now, we only have about 30% of parents that say they want to use bus transportation at all. So that may change what we look at in our transportation next year. We're still waiting on physical education guidance and whether or not we'll be able to hold our physical education and our wellness classes the way we always do. So that's something that we really have to look at. Any of the extracurricular guidance has not come out yet, so we're obviously that we keep getting requests around the fall sports season. That's a big concern, I know, of kids and families as well. That's due in the next week or two, telling us what that's going to look like. Another big concern I know of kids and families is whether or not we'll be able to do music, band, and chorus. There's a lot of concerns at the state level around that. Jason actually sent me a really good study today that I took a look at, that an independent group has done about the effects and whether or not you can actually do it. In some ways you can make some considerations to make sure you still have band, chorus, and music class. We're looking at probably next week, I think, is going to be the start and stop protocols. So those would be protocols that say if you have X amount of students in your building that have tested or are showing COVID symptoms, this is what you need to do. So for instance, if you remember last year when this all first started, there were places where there would be one student that had, or a friend of a student or a family member that tested positive, and schools were being shut down because we didn't have any guidance around that, and there was no real medical guidance around that. Now that they've put that together, so the medical team working with the state and DESE has put together the stop-start protocols for us in all schools. So we'll be getting that next week. I think it's about 20 or 30 pages that we're gonna have to go through and make sure that we have a very deep understanding of if we open up in person or hybrid. So those are an additional special ed guidance as well. So, it's frustrating in the sense that we have to wait for these, but you have to, being on the inside and having some of those conversations at the state level, there are so many layers to this. And as one department or as one group of physicians complete it, it goes to another and another and another, and it ends up with the governor and his team, and then we wait at that point for them to release that. So it's not just a DESE or a DPH, it's really so many different groups or agencies involved in developing this. And that's why it's not, we have this huge sense of urgency because we want to get the planning done and done right, but we're still waiting on some of this. So I just can't say enough about the staff and everyone that's been working on these committees. They're really committed, thoughtful, want to do what's best for Medfield kids, and that's what we're trying to do here is figure it out. And sometimes we feel like we're building the plane as we're flying, but I think we'll have a good plan ready for August 6th for you to view, and I'll certainly give you an update as to where we are at our meeting on the 30th, because as you know, it's changing all the time. So what we may think of as what we're looking and working toward today, by this time next week, we might be looking at a very different model. So we're going to let that data guide us and keep moving forward. That's all I have for the reopening update, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Now at this time, if anyone would like to say anything, if you could please raise your hand and we'll move you over as a panelist so you can speak. Now would be the time. Oh, Heidi Feldman. Let's see. Here we go. Promote to panelist. Hi, Heidi.
Hi, how are you?
Well, how are you?
I'm good, thanks. I'm not a stranger to this COVID preparation because I work at Northeastern University, and you've probably seen Northeastern all over the news about going back in person.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the things that we're doing at Northeastern that I have questions about for Medfield are student, faculty, staff, COVID testing. Northeastern has bought so many tests, they're testing everybody every 5 days, that's mandatory. Now, of course, the density in Boston and everything is a little bit different than Medfield, I recognize that, but density is an issue. So for example, according to the current CDC guidelines, in my class, I have 19 students. I'm only allowed to have 6 students physically co-present at the 3-foot distance in that class based on maximum room capacity. So issues of density, issues of testing, issues of what happens when faculty get sick. Is there going to be, for teachers, medical leave, medical pay? How long do they have to stay out? What's the backup plan? And we're encouraged to have an online component of teaching, and they're actually encouraging us to opt out of in-person teaching unless you teach labs. So because it's, you know, a little different and we can have space. So I guess my question or my hope is like, sure, of course, in-person teaching is better. It's easier. I'm trying to prep my classes online. It's a huge pain in the neck. It might be better and more thoughtful, but especially for the younger kids, I know it's hard. But is there any thought about testing and monitoring for the safety of the kids, aside from wearing masks, and who polices that? And some people don't believe in wearing masks, and how do you enforce that? I mean, that's everywhere, right? And what do you do about teaching and substitutes and things like that? So I didn't know if that was part of your first round of discussions before you get to the hybrid model, which I probably would be leaning more in favor of for now until the country gets this COVID thing under control. So I don't know if you have any thoughts about that.
Okay, well, there's a lot in there, Heidi. That's for sure. I would say that I think you can appreciate the difference between the private sector and public sector in something like this. We rely more on our local Board of Health and their guidance around, you know, what we do with testing. Right now, there is no testing program statewide for any educators or that requirement for anyone doing that. I have to tell you, I wouldn't even know how to go about purchasing a test, to be quite honest about it. We've been working with our school physician on some of that. She's given us a lot of research. So right now there's nothing on the testing piece. As far as, and help me again, Heidi, you had a lot of stuff in there. So
the room density. So Matt, I mean, I know you said you went through and you measured.
Right.
I know that according to fire departments, they have maximum room capacity, which
right.
I know for some of the rooms it's smaller. So if you have a class of about 22, which might be, I think, my daughter's going to be in 4th grade. I think she has like 22 students. So what's the maximum room capacity? So they did it by that. So according to the CDC guidelines, in my room capacity, I have 19 students, 24 capacity, something. I am allowed to have 6 kids.
So one of the issues I think statewide right now around the guidance that we got from DESE is that it doesn't use the same standards that CDC has on some issues, and one of them is room capacity. So there's no guidance around, there's no capacity for rooms. It's really basically the 3 to 6 foot number, and whether or not you can have enough kids in there in the room, in the space, but there's no real capacity number, which interestingly enough, in the draft of that version that I saw, there was going to be a cap at between 21 and 25 students. And then that cap was not in the final draft. And again, that's how, when you see it go through different agencies, the medical personnel at the governor's level took that out. So we don't have a capacity number at all. It's really, if you can fit those students in with the physical distancing of 3 to 6 feet, then that's what, within a safe number. But there's no capacity. There was going to be the 20, like I said, 21, 25, but there's none now. And the issues around substitute teaching, I mean, that's something that we're working on as far as with the leadership team. We're going through all of that. Yeah, there's a lot there, and once we get the plan, all those details will be in there.
Has the state said anything about staff or student testing? I think that was one part of Heidi's question.
Yeah, so nothing around that. In fact, the original thoughts were around taking everyone's temperature before they came in school. So the first guidance they were looking at was when kids get on the bus, and then they scrapped that. And then it was when kids came into school, then they scrapped that. And I guess the science around that was there was way too many false positives and negatives around that. So that was the temperature screening is not part of it at all anymore. To Heidi, your question around staff, there's a whole CARES Act provision that's going to allow staff to take leaves, additional sick time. There's a whole law that codifies that whole process now for staff. So that's not going to be an issue at all for people.
Yeah, I mean, I asked that question because I know even at the university, I have tenure, but I'm not protected by that in this environment, and nobody feels protected. So if people opt out of teaching because they're concerned or have anxiety of coming back to teach in person, then they're worried that they're going to lose their job. And I think a lot of people have seen that in some other districts.
Okay, yeah, I haven't heard of that at all, but I just know there's provisions around that so that protect people around there. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Heidi. Anything else?
There's a lot, but I'll let someone else go.
Thank you. Renee Carlson.
Also, Anna Mae, are we also taking questions off of Q&A? Because I've got a couple of people lined up there on Q&A. So I don't know if they want to raise their hands and ask their questions on video or not. There are at least 3 typing in at this point. So I don't know how we want to do this.
I was hoping we would, have people come in and actually chat with us, but
Right.
So if you folks don't mind raising your hand, we'll as I say, beam you over.
Okay.
Hi, Renee.
Hi. Thank you so much for holding this meeting, and thank all of you so much for all of the extra work that has just been piled on top of you because of COVID. Like, your work is seen by the community, and we just appreciate all the extra time that you've taken to handle all of this. So I have 3, maybe 4-part question. My first, actually, they're all different questions, but I'll just ask them all. So the first part is just about mental health and what kind of conversations are we having about kids' mental health during this time as they return to school, if they don't return to school. I certainly understand that we're looking out for the physical health of our children and our staff, but we, as a parent, there are some concerns about the mental aspect of how this is taking a toll on our children as well. And then the second part is not related, but, when the big umbrella, the bigger question is, when will this stop? So, right, like in March, we hunkered down for 2 weeks so that we could flatten the curve, so that we can get this under control. And it's July, and we have it under control, and I'm not a scientist, but especially in Medfield, our numbers are looking great. And so again, as a parent who is not only looking out for the physical well-being of their child, but also the mental health piece, and, when will this end? Like, is this the new normal? Like, and maybe you don't know the answer to that. And then the last part is just about masks. And I know in the first round of recommendations, you know, there was talk about second grade and up, mask requirements, and then first grade, kindergarten, and preschool not being mandated. So I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about that as well, as far as like, are they recommended? Are they mandatory? What about kids with asthma? What about kids with special needs? Things like that. Like if you could just get into more of the specifics about that. So mental health.
Yeah.
When will this stop? And masks.
So the mental health piece obviously is important. Our director of social emotional learning is a part of the reentry, and he's been part of the conversations all along. Our guidance counselors are part of that. In fact, I would say that that is probably one of the main driving forces for the state level pediatricians of why we need to go back to school. They've cited that as one of their number one reasons why we should be going back full time is the mental health of our students, because they have, and this came out of the meeting I was at today, they have seen an increase in depression, anxiety in kids over the last 3 months. And, you know, part of that is not being with their peers. So that's a big concern for us, and that goes without saying, absolutely. As far as when this is going to end, I was told today that we should plan on doing one of these three models at least for a year. So this entire school year and possibly into the next school year to be mentally prepared for that. So that's kind of where we are. As far as masks, the guidance is saying grades 2 and up. I'm telling you right now that what I present to the school committee will have masks pre-K to 12. I don't see any reason why we shouldn't have masks on our kids in every single building. I kind of have a problem with it. You know, I think the data around that is pretty clear. And, you know, I've gone by Reilly Beginnings this week, and I've seen small kids out there with masks. I watched the kids at the summer camp over at Dale. I went out and saw some of those kids, and, you know, they do better than the adults think they're doing with masks. So I think it's an important piece for the kids themselves to be safe, and also to keep our staff safe, that everyone has a mask. As far as kids that don't have a mask, or parents don't want them to have a mask, you know, that's something we're going to have to talk about, because we brought that up at the state today about what the process is going to be around that. You know, do we have the right at that point to say that you're going to go into remote learning as a kid because your parent won't? I'm not saying that's what we're doing. I'm saying that's what the conversation was today. So that's something. In fact, if anyone saw on the news, it was either last night or this morning, they're recommending that parents start having kids wear masks now, so that they're used to them by the time school starts, because as the pediatrician said, if you start the day before school, it's not going to go well, you know. So the kids have to get used to them. But I really see no reason why we shouldn't be doing pre-K through 12 masks. And of course, if there are issues around health reasons or any other reasons where someone can't wear a mask, obviously we would accommodate like we do with everything else. But as a rule, I'm going to present to the committee that everyone should have masks on.
Jeff, just to kind of hinge on that, with masks, do you expect any guidance from the state about the standards for masks? What those masks will be? Will you know, obviously every child is different. Every child's sensory needs are different.
Right. And
there is also this kind of part about being able to understand the social pragmatics of your peers.
Right.
So will there be suggestions or kind of specifics around, you know, number of layers, whether a clear mask would be okay? Are the bandana masks? I mean, will we be putting that out as a district, or do you think?
Yeah. So the other thing is that they're going to be putting guidance out on is mask breaks. So make sure that, especially for the little ones, if you have a mask on for X amount of minutes, certain kids can go outside the room, take their mask off, or they can go outside, all those kinds of things that we're going to build in. But I think people need to really understand that whether we go back in person or whether we go back hybrid in September, it's not going to be anything close to what regular school is like. It just isn't, you know. And, you know, we don't teach in rows anymore. You know, we set up classrooms like 1965. You go in there, it's like when we were all in school. Everyone's in a row, everyone's facing the same way. That's not where we do education anymore, but that's what we're going to have to do if we want in person. So everyone needs to get in the mindset that if we go in person, it's not going to be like it was last first day of school. It's just not. So there are going to be some changes, and people are going to have to get used to those. And it's the flexibility part is going to have to be huge for everyone, because it's not going to be business as usual in any school in Massachusetts.
Yeah. And I think that there's a parent and community part to this too, where we have to make sure we're not projecting to our kids how disappointing this is to us about their experience, right? Because they can and will be as resilient as we tell them they can be, and every kid has adjustments, but I think it's really important that as parents, we're projecting not only do I know you can handle this, this will be fine. This will be good. This is just school, right? Like any other adjustment. And it's very hard right now, but that's more hard for us because it's our experience of what school should be. And especially for a lot of our little kids, this is the very first experience in their own memory that they're going to have of in-person, assuming we get to go back in person, so masks are part of that. Okay. And they, it's going to be even a little, I think we just need to be kind of, as parents, projecting that this is something that they can handle and not projecting our own anxieties as much as we may feel them. But that's our job, is to kind of split those two things.
So there is a question on the Q&A that says, will parents have a choice in this? So absolutely. I mean, parents always have a choice, right? It's your kid. You always have a choice. So if we go back in person, and you're a part of the 3.5% or the 18% that are unsure, and you want to have your kid or your children being remote, then there's a couple of options that we're looking at right now. One is you can do a homeschool model, and that takes one way of going, where you would do a curriculum and send it to me, and I would approve it, and we have to do check-ins. Or what we're trying to do on the state level is to have a learning management system that is statewide, that is self-paced, that would have one of our staff members checking in, but it would be fully remote, online, and be by grade level. And that would be an additional choice for someone, because we would have that responsibility, educate your child either way. But we can't have, it's impossible to ask a teacher to have a foot in both worlds. I can't expect teachers to be teaching 25 kids in their class. Oh, and by the way, they also have to monitor the 7 kids that are doing an online remote system that the state sets up. It doesn't work that way. It's not going to work that way. So we'll utilize staff that we have to monitor that. People won't be out on an island by themselves. We'll have support from us, but it will look different. There's no way we can have feet in both worlds. It just won't work.
Hey, Jeff, just follow up, because I think you hinted at it. So on the masks, I think you said you're seeking guidance from DC or the state for those that choose not to wear them. I think of that as being, like, if I just look at some other topics that come up in the school, we're going to want to be pretty firm one way or the other.
Yeah.
Provided we're allowed to.
Yep.
I.e., what is the impact if students do choose not to, right? Like, because otherwise teachers, I think of it almost like, I don't want it to be like the mobile phone, where there's sometimes a little bit of this gray area, and it becomes too much work for them to try to police.
I'm
early. I'm waiting for guidance, but it's just something that I think about.
No, it's a requirement, and if we have a situation where, and I hope that once we get to that point, that you folks support the pre-K, K and 1, so essentially all of Memorial School will have masks as well. That's going to be a requirement. So, like any other requirement, there'll be consequences. So we just got to kind of figure that out and what that looks like. It puts us in a very tough position, that's for sure.
So Jeff, there's just one parent here, and I've heard this before, and I think I wanted to just clarify this. There's somebody saying, if kids have sensory issues or kind of documented medical issues in which they would not be able to wear a mask, or that it simply wouldn't work. What are the parameters around that? I assume that would be written into their IEP, that we would, or their 504s, making sure that we have an ability to educate them in a way that is appropriate.
But
that's obviously something we're going to have to look at in terms of.
Yeah, we're not there yet with that. We're still working through that a little bit.
Yeah. So unfortunately, there are just no answers about that right now because we don't have the special ed guidance at this point.
Yeah, if you didn't see the introduction to all this, I went through a lot of the guidance that we're still waiting for.
Yeah.
And that's part of it.
Yeah, I just, as a special needs mother myself, and I'm sure that you're obviously doing this, but we, as you think about, the rigidity of the mask rule, just take into consideration not only kids with sensory issues, but kids on the autism spectrum, just, who have autism spectrum disorder, they are learning how to read the room, if you will. So to take those things into consideration and, when thinking about like what kids will wear them and what kids won't, like, to take those things into consideration.
Absolutely. Thanks, Renee.
Thanks.
Thank you so much, Renee. And I will bring over Chris, and then I think Doug Morrison had a question he'd rather not get beamed over. So
I think he actually said that it'd be faster at this point to beam him over. So.
All right. Well, Chris. So Chris, I'll just move her over. And then that'll be great. Thank you, Chris, for your patience.
Hi. Thanks for the opportunity to chime in, actually, and to echo Renee's comments. Thank you for all of the work that you guys are doing. As I think about the logistics of the day-to-day, my questions were very much pretty straightforward in regards to not only the sanitizer that I think you alluded to, Jeff, the also cleaning procedures and protocols and what materials you'll be using to follow that.
Right.
And secondly, just like for the littles, I have one in first grade and second, what's the bathroom procedure like? Are we thinking through what that ask is for the teacher as well for the smaller kids?
Yeah, I mean, so the cleaning procedures, we're going to use what is recommended by CDC in terms of cleaning. So we have a whole set of protocols that we're working on right now, which includes deep cleaning on certain days, doing the cleaning to the high touch surfaces all during the day, throughout the day. And I think we're working with the leadership team and I working through some of those protocols for bathrooms, especially for the little ones, and utilizing our teaching assistants to help out with that because we're going to have to monitor how many kids are in the bathroom at the same time. So
right.
We're going to have to do all that. So we'll be utilizing staff to do that. And I think that our custodians have gone through some training. They'll probably have additional training prior to the start of school on what best methods are for cleaning. And we certainly have a whole lot of product on hand right now. So that's our plan. We were told to get about 3 to 4 months worth of supplies. So that's what really, so that companies would have enough for everyone. And then we're going to restock that up early in the fall, so we'll have enough to get us through the winter. But that's where we are with that. With good protocols, high touch area cleaning, and then classroom cleaning as well.
Jeff, are there any organic? Well, everything's organic to some extent, but are there any kind of non-chemical, traditionally organic cleaning materials that are approved at this point by the CDC?
Michael, that's stuff that we tested out today. Was that organic?
Yeah, so we are currently testing out products that the CDC has put on the list as organic cleaning supplies. But we just have to make sure that they work on our behalf also. So we're trying to meet the CDC requirements. And then the second part of it is how much of the supply can we get in? Because there are some suppliers that are 6 to 7 weeks behind. We are working with 2 main suppliers right now that we've worked with in the past. And we're trying to introduce some other cleaning supplies that will help the situation.
Are we able to get the formula that we need for the guns that we have, the sanitizing guns? So we've been able to get that.
Yep.
Have we been able to get any more of those, or are those the single most popular thing on earth right now?
You got five more today, Michael?
So we have 1 gun for each building, and we also put an order in for backpacks. So they're the same type of concept. This is what Jeff was saying. We're testing out a different type of solution that goes into them that is more organic than the first product that we used. So those are being tested out today, Friday, over the weekend, and then we'll make a decision Monday and Tuesday.
Boy.
It certainly smells clean when you use it, that's for sure. In that Listerine kind of smell. Yeah.
Does that help you out, Chris?
It does. Thank you. Beam away.
All right.
Thanks, Chris.
I'm just going to go ahead and read. All right, so Chris, so Doug Morrison. If anyone else wants to be beamed over, please raise your hand, but I'll go ahead and read the comments. If the state mandates how every public school should be run, why was there a big difference in the spring, how each district operated, i.e. amount of Zoom calls, access to teachers online, etc.? Is that a union issue?
Any type of change in working conditions, Doug, have to be negotiated. So every school district negotiated their own memorandum of understanding with every local union. So that's why you saw differences town by town.
Okay, and if anonymous attendee would please indicate in a follow-up comment who you are, then I can read it, please, thank you. Kelly Keene, so happy to hear masks for even the younger ones, thank you. Jennifer Hearn, I think Jess, you asked that question. Bonnie Marcette, thank you for the masks. Let's see, Jen Hearn, okay, for many children it's not a choice. Jackie Corrigan, how can it be a requirement if the state doesn't mandate it? I don't think you have any basis to enforce this. I think this is regarding the masks.
Must be the masks.
Yeah.
I would not, just FYI, I would not be surprised in the coming week if you have the governor mandate masks for everyone. I just would not be surprised if that happens. I think it's pretty close.
All right, thank you. This is from Jennifer Hearn. Thank you, Jess. Please keep in mind that most Ks don't have 504s or IEPs because they haven't been tracked yet.
So that's about, and just kind of generally, because I know that Jen would know this anyway, but that's about really making sure that you make contact with if you believe that this is going to be an issue, that you're making contact with your principal and your nurse and student services before, if you even have like an inkling that there could be something. And I would say that about almost any disability, be it learning disability or difference or physical or whatever. Just make sure that you're keeping in contact with your principals and with your nurse and the student services, because that's really the best time for the district, I think, just as the parent who has kind of gone through a lot of these experiences, to know who they're getting and what your impression is of your child. So, I mean, that goes with, at this point right now, at this question, it goes with masks, but I would say with any concern that you have about your kid anytime, please know that the principals in our buildings, if you are new to the district, are very, very accessible and they want to know. So just say that.
Jackie Corrigan, sanitation products should be reviewed by parents. My child will not be surrounded by harmful chemicals. Over-sanitation weakens our immune systems and makes us more susceptible to illness. Bonnie Marcette, oh, it keeps, will there be any requirements around students keeping their video on during Zoom sessions? I believe
Yes.
Kids need to be on video and it should not be an option to turn it off for more than 5 minutes per session. At the middle school level, it became uncool to be on video and there was peer pressure to turn off the videos.
I have to say, I think
There could be some requirements around that.
yeah. But we should also, there's an equity issue there and kind of a student privacy issue. So I think that we would have to think about whether there is, if a child decides that they feel uncomfortable having their peers see the inside of their home, that we give them perhaps, and this is just an idea, we give them a background that's required, you know, if they feel uncomfortable having their home displayed for one reason or another.
So Jess, I think something like that makes sense. But would be logical that that's something that their parents support. You know, in other words, a child unilaterally makes that decision versus.
Well, yeah, but we also, I mean, there's so many things that happen in school that parents don't necessarily make decisions around. And I think that our kids need, at a certain level, you know, if we're talking about elementary, but once we do get to middle school, like, kids need as much choice in this very in this uncontrolled kind of environment. Sometimes I think, you know, the choice of being on Zoom and having the video on, or being able to kind of block the background with something that's standardized is, you know, you can always have a talk with your parent, but there's also, you know, this doesn't sound like a big lift to be able to kind of give them, and I'm not even talking about like, and we can talk about longer, but what I was saying is that I know that this was one of the discussions we had at a district level about whether we allow kids to, if kids are uneasy having their home shown, that we give them other alternatives. And I think that's why so many Zooms were off for a lot of the time, or at least initially, and then it just became cool. It's really hard to run a class without a kid's face there. I get that. So.
Nicole Crocker, what are the options for recess? I have heard talk of no recess. I'm concerned about kids not getting needed outdoor time. I understand recess will look different, but really hope that they are allowed to go outside each day. Thank you.
Yeah, I hope they are too. We haven't heard anything on that. I mean, I've heard some rumblings about no recess, but I think we'll make every effort to get our kids outside. In fact, they want us to have classes outside and do that kind of, as much as you can, bring your kids outside for class. So I can't imagine there'll be no recess. I just think it might look a little different, but I agree, Nicole, we need to have our kids outside and have some recess.
Jay Ganasti, if the hybrid model is used, will parents have input on what days their children can attend school?
That's a great question. So we're looking at a couple of different models for a hybrid. So what we're looking at and what we support educationally and what the medical world might tell us we have to do are two different things. So we're thinking that the medical model, from what we've been told, would have a hybrid of 1 week on, 1 week remote. We are not in favor of that. We think the more contacts you have in person are the best. So we would look at something where kids, and again, I'm just going to say, just hypothetically, some things we're thinking about. I don't want everyone to think that this is what we're definitely doing. You know, we would look at something where there'd be a cohort A and a cohort B, and those kids would stay together, and we'd do it alphabetically as a district so that families could stay together in that same cohort. And you'd have something like cohort A goes to school on in-person live on Mondays and Thursdays, and cohort B goes in person live on Tuesdays and Fridays, and then alternate a half day of A and B on Wednesday. And then the afternoon would be a half day around teacher planning on some of the work they would have to do for both asynchronous and synchronous learning. So that's something that we're looking at. I just am not in favor of the week on, week off, but we may, who knows, we may be forced into something like that, but I don't think it's good for kids, and it's not great for teachers either.
Kristen P, if you could pretty please write your last name in one of the Q&As, although I believe Dr. Marsden talked about that, but I'll go on to Jen Hearn's next one. They won't allow any new 504 IEP cases to be considered until school reopens in person, says the IEP contacts at Dale and Memorial. So there will be an exception will there be an exception regarding wearing masks? Sorry to harp on this.
I don't know, Jen. We're not sure yet.
This seems like kind of like an individual kid case by case basis. And I think probably, again, taking it up with the principal and taking it up with student services, you know, before you get to school seems like the best way to go with that. Because you know, every kid is going to have different needs, and we want to make sure that we pay attention to that.
Okay, Kelly Keene, not sure if Medfield has electrostatic disinfecting machines. I'm a school nurse in another district, and we use these during heavy flu seasons, etc.
We sure do. Yeah, we've had it for a couple of years.
All right.
And that's what we were just talking about. We have at least one per building, right, at this point? And
Yep.
we're
We have
talking
one per
about
building.
backpack
We
units, so-
purchased another backpack models. That's what we're looking at getting additional ones.
Right.
Okay, so anonymous attendee is Tara Oliveto. Jess, thank you for advocating for all students.
Sure,
I'll go
no
back
problem.
up there. And Kristen P. Parton. So I hope you heard that what Dr. Marsden said about the outdoor. We're still seeking guidance, but I joined a little late, so apologies. But have we talked about moving classes outdoors as much as possible?
Yeah, I think we just did.
Yeah. And Jules Hoffman, I understand there will be some medical and sensory reasons some children will not be able to wear masks. So for families that are concerned about virus risk, this creates a higher chance of transmission. Will children who cannot wear masks be in class with children who do wear masks? This is especially important for kids who live in multi-generational homes or have family members at home who are high risk.
Yeah, that's a great question, Jules. We're working through that right now. I think that's a really important factor of why all kids in the district need to have masks on and not just grades 2 through 12.
OA, if you could pretty please
Oh,
write.
she did. It's Louise Aronowitz. She put
Oh,
on.
good. Oh,
There you
sorry.
go.
Thank you. How does the school plan to manage lunch and eating snacks in classrooms in terms of seating and space in the cafeterias, removal of masks to eat, food handling, etc.? Louise Aronowitz.
Yeah, so right now we're looking at, and again, this could change, definitely could change. We're looking at, for the most part, lunch and snack in the classroom. So we have snack in the classroom every day anyway, and lunch would be brought to the students. So if students were buying lunch, we'd have a cart that would go to them. They wouldn't be leaving and going into the cafeteria. We're looking at different models for the older kids. We're trying to get more outside spaces for the high school so that kids at the high school could eat outside. We're also looking at potential grab and go lunch at the high school. So there's a few different things that we're working on with that, but that's definitely going to be a challenge for people statewide is managing the cafeteria, the lunch piece.
A lot of this, one of the things that concerns me the most is that I hear so much of this kind of like eat outside, but I don't know if you guys live in the same New England that I live in, but by November, this gets old and cold pretty quickly, and that there's, multiple months where it's really just not feasible to ask people to eat outside or have, I've seen some guidance that says keep your windows open and stuff like that. I think like so much of this is like dependent on kind of fresh air and getting kids outside, and
Right.
But it's not necessarily feasible at a certain point, right? Or certainly not humane, so I think we're just going to be reasoning a lot of this on the fly as it happens, as we get towards the winter time. And that's also the time where there's the highest risk for flu season as well. And so it's just a lot of things
in a world where people love absolutes, there's going to be a lot of improvisation.
Right.
Depending on what the latest data is, depending on, we need to be prepared for if we are in person or hybrid and there's an outbreak in one of our schools, then that school goes remote and the others stay. So all these kinds of things are going to be happening statewide that we have to be prepared for. And, there's risk involved with any decision we make.
Right.
If we make a hybrid decision that any in-person there's risk, no matter what. And there was before COVID-19. So I think we just have to really think about it, be thoughtful, and let the science guide what we're doing.
All right, Kelly Keene, sorry, one more question. Would week A, week B be better for infection control purposes than every other day in the hybrid model?
Yeah, that's why, Kelly, you and the medical people want us to do 1 week on and 1 week off because of that main fact. So what our issue is group A, there'll be cleaning at night, district-wide, and all the classrooms. B would come in, and then there'd be a deep clean all day Wednesday in all 5 buildings, and then repeat. So I'm really looking at it from an educational piece where we think that A, B is better educationally. We may be told that we need to do a B model, which is something you're alluding to in your question.
So Jeff, would that be like a Monday, Tuesday is A, and then
Yep.
Thursday, Friday is B?
Mhm.
Yeah, as long as it's within the same week, I think that still retains that value. And that was actually a specific question. I think I shared it out from the Wellesley Public Schools. They asked that specific question, and it was definitely preferred by parents if they had to go hybrid, that
Yeah.
it be a hybrid week, not a hybrid week to week.
Mhm.
Joanna Home, how are you planning to do lunch and maintain, okay, we talked about that bit, and maintain safe physical distance, especially as masks cannot be worn while eating?
These are all good questions. Yeah.
Kevin Arthur, I would like this, the scope of the issue to be presented to the audience for reference and perspective. Statewide data per Mass Department of Health, daily COVID dashboard, ages 0 to 19, 6,268 total positive cases, 111 hospitalizations, 0 deaths.
Okay, thank you, Kevin.
Thank you. Jen,
Can you give us your last name, Jen?
please, and JK, can you please give us your
It's
full
Julia
name?
Catwinkle.
Oh, all righty. If it's Julia. If there are teachers and specialists who decide not to return to the classroom this fall, when will this be announced to the families? Is there a deadline for teachers to let the district know their plan? Oh, thank you, Julia. I see that.
Yeah, Julia, there's no deadline right now. I mean, that's really a thing that we're working with the teachers on, and we're working with the association on as well. As soon as we know that kind of information, we'll get it out quickly. I don't know if you saw what I shared earlier, maybe you weren't on, that we had 92% of our staff said they were coming back in person if we did in-person model, and only one staff member said they were not coming back. I'm not saying that's going to stay the same. It could definitely change. If numbers change, that will go up, but we'll do our best to make sure that parents know what the situation is.
And Renee Carlson, will siblings be in the same hybrid?
Yes, absolutely.
All righty. So no other hands raised, no other questions.
So there's one question on there. I know the person didn't put their last name.
Oh.
So there's a question around the school calendar changing. So one of the things that we talked to the commissioner about today is looking at additional training days for teachers. So typically in Medfield, we have 2 days prior to the start of school where teachers come in and we do professional development and training. We would look at, we asked for a reduction in the school year for students. So that would be 177 school year day instead of 180. And that would allow 3 additional days. So I may be coming back to the school committee with a recommendation for that last week in August to be all teacher training days and no school, and school starting after Labor Day this year. So that's the only change I can see right now. There's no real conversations around vacations or anything. We just don't know. I mean, we just don't know. So if things get worse and the state steps in as far as shutting down like they did in the spring, then that will have an effect on our schedule and our calendar. But right now we don't know that.
Alrighty. And actually this was Tara's, now that we know who anonymous attendee. Her first question was, will groups outside of the immediate school staff, such as MAP, be able to still use spaces within the school?
I'm sorry, I didn't.
No, that's all right. If you scroll to the very tippy top, it says, will groups outside of the immediate school staff, such as MAP, be able to still use spaces within the school?
Yeah, that's in conversation.
Okay.
Yeah, it's our assumption, yes, but we have to look at the cleaning protocols, and so yeah, we need to talk about that.
Okay. Actually, there's Heidi Feldman. Along those lines, any discussion on standardized testing requirements?
I know that whenever we bring up MCAS to the commissioner, he laughs and says, let's get the start of school done first. So my sense is there's going to be some adjustment in MCAS. I'd be shocked if there isn't, but I'm not sure it's going to be what I've been seeing in the newspaper that is being requested, but I'm sure there'll be something.
Trish, and I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly. I apologize if not, Zoki. From a parent perspective, it seems like AAAB model would be easier to manage. So if that was a comment. Kelly Keene, one more question, and I was late joining, so I'm sorry if I already talked about. Are you involved with MAP, or is that a whole separate thing in discussion, right?
It is, yep.
Okay, Jen Kine, I know we don't have a bus guidance, but will there be a monitor on the bus to be sure kids are wearing masks? The driver cannot deal with that. What will drop-off pickup procedure be like if people don't plan to use the bus?
It'll be busy. That's what it'll be like. I would say that that's something that we're definitely looking at as far as making sure that kids have masks on. You know, some of the things we're also looking at is staggered starts, especially looking at different starting times and ending times at the middle school and, in the high school. You know, if we have no one using the buses or very few using the buses, and we have all of those families coming at the same time, it's going to be even worse than it normally is on those drop-offs at those two schools. So we're going to look a little bit at that and see if that makes sense for us. But we need to get solid numbers, which we'll start to get in the more comprehensive survey that will go home to parents next week, the end of next week, next Thursday. So then we'll get much more data around who will be taking the bus, and we can start to plan some of those routes. We may be in a situation where we're doing, you know, double and triple runs, so that's why we have to adjust some of the times. But we may find that after double or triple runs that parents want to bring their kids to school instead of putting them on the bus, and that's, you know, that's okay too. So we gotta figure that out.
I think that is it for the questions, folks.
Nope,
One more, no, two more.
two more. There's Lori Gross.
Yep. Will there
And,
be more allowances for high school seniors regarding days off to look at colleges, since those days have been reduced because of spring and summer college closures?
That's a great question, Lori. I haven't even thought about it yet. We'll have to go through that.
Lori wins. Good.
Janelle and Peter McCardle, is there going to be consistency around Zoom calls and content for classes?
Yeah, that's a great question. So that the 5 groups the building-based groups that worked last week worked on the remote learning plan and got some feedback this week on that. So that's our intent, and then we need to again work with the association and try to come to a memorandum of agreement on what those parameters look like.
Great. Now I think that's it. Thank you very much, everyone, for participating. All right, we'll go on to the next item on the agenda, which is any other items since posting on July 14th. I think you mentioned an additional meeting date.
Right. So that was the only thing I had there, is an additional meeting date for August 6th, if you would consider that.
Make a motion for a meeting date on August 6th.
Great. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second, Jess. We'll take a roll call vote. Jess Reilly,
Aye.
Leo Brem,
Aye.
Megan Glenn.
Aye.
Okay, we heard you. Tim Knight,
Aye.
Anna Mae O'Shea Brooke. Aye. All right, so we have a new meeting, an additional meeting on August the 6th.
Right.
Super. All right, now down to old business, diversity, equity, inclusion, the process around the mascot public forum, which we're going to have on July 30th. Actually, Jess and I met with a couple of Walpole School Committee members just this week to discuss process, how, you know, lessons learned, what would you do again, what wouldn't you do again, and we actually had I thought a really wonderful conversation. It was very kind of them to share their wisdom and their process with us, and so I'd like to go through that, and Jess can certainly chime in, But for the process for the mascot public forum, they had suggested, or they used, a Google form for people to fill out prior. So basically, name, email, full name, their street address, their connection to Walpole, which, you know, whether you're alumni, a resident, a parent, a student, etc. And then they asked, do you wish to speak at the public forum? And yes or no. And then on what side are you speaking on, either for or changing, and then any other comments. So how they worked it was that if you wanted to speak during the public forum, we would have your name beforehand, and you would have to, like tonight, you know, we weren't hard on, you have to come over. But they felt, and they suggested that, just so this process is very clear and so everyone's on the same page, to really have that process in place. So we would ask folks if they would like to speak publicly, they would be beamed over, and we would have that list beforehand. And so that is how we would work that. Jess, did you want to add anything else regarding our meeting or process?
Yeah, I think, again, we have to kind of remember that we're looking at this as a two-part process. One specifically around the logo, and this is specifically about the logo itself for this meeting. And we want to take some time to kind of marinate that and simply kind of understand where people may have sticking points, and so that we would then probably vote after, right? We were thinking about voting on the 13th for that.
At the last meeting, we had discussed, because we had so many things, this is
right.
time to go through the, you know, because we had today's listening session regarding the reopening of school. And then July 30th was, we picked that day because that was the day the students could actually talk. So we chose the July 30th for that public forum around the logo itself. And then on August 13th, we would vote on the logo. But also on the 13th, we would have our Dale Street grade configuration public forum. And then on August 27th, we would have our grade configuration vote. So there were a lot of dates, and I'm very sorry if that was confusing, but
no, I think that we just want to kind of make sure that people know exactly what the process is. And that was one of the things that I think Walpole, and actually I spent a lot of time talking to our representative from the Mass Association of School Committees, because many districts throughout the state are doing this right now. And it's because their communities are coming to them saying, it's time to discuss this. And I know that a lot of people have asked us, you know, like, why now? And it's just that it's the time that people have brought it to us. And the logo discussion itself is actually a fairly simple one. It's a yes or no. And then we can talk about process beyond that. But one of the things that I appreciated about Walpole was that they were so very clear that even if you didn't want that comment out in the, didn't want to make the public comment or whatever, that you were free to fill out that Google form so that we would know what your opinion was. And this isn't about collecting statistics about whether who wants it or who doesn't, but really for understanding what our community conversation is going to be like over the next several months around this, you know? And I think that there are a lot of nice tie-ins with our own mission statement about really raising kids who are part of the larger world and not simply within our town, you know, so that there's a lot of really good, there's just a lot of really rich information here that I think is important. The other thing that we had talked about is that we will have students who will be coming to us, because this is also a very important decision to have a student voice in. Obviously, you can't just have a bunch of adults coming in and saying no, or yes, or whatever. But we've also had people say, you know, I'm concerned that with the internet now, somebody could look back at what a child has said 17 years, you know, from now and hold that against them as times change, as people understand things differently. So I think that we had talked about how do we help students kind of construct their arguments in a thoughtful way. And also that we need to really think about continuing student privacy for anybody who happens to be under 18 years old. And so we are really thinking about these issues, because I know that I had a couple of people mention that was a concern. And we've thought of that as a concern too. So we really do want student input, but we also want you to know that we're not, we also would never want to put a child at risk for, you know, something or violate their privacy in that way. So we'll work out something about that.
Yeah,
Okay.
We want everyone to be seen in their best light, I would
Right.
say. You know?
Right. And I think there will be a lot of very thoughtful arguments one way or the other, and I'm looking forward to hearing them.
Great. So we'll get out that Google Doc, and Dr. Marsden paper, perhaps we can email it out. We can send it over to the patch, and people can share it on Facebook, and perhaps a press release, just so people know that it's there, and people can fill out the form. So people who want to be involved or heard can do so.
Right.
And also the Alumni Association.
Yes, I do want to, yes.
Perfect. Alrighty. And so again, public forum on the mascot logo, just to be 110% clear, is on July 30th, and our vote on the mascot is on August 13th. Great. So any other comments on that? We can go on to the next agenda item, which is the Dale Street project timeline.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So as we know, we had our meeting last week, our school building committee meeting last week, and we had a working group meeting this week as well. And, you know, looked at trying to firm up the timeline as we go forward, making sure that we are all set for our submission to MSBA in October. So I think you alluded to it earlier about having the grade configuration vote that you had scheduled, and I'm blanking on the date right now for that.
August 13th is our public forum for grade
Gotcha. Grade configuration.
Yeah, and then
Right.
our vote is the 27th.
27th, right. So I think that's, you know, that's an important piece of the milestone, which kind of gets us going forward, because depending on what the grade configuration is, it really tries to trim down what options we're looking at. So if we're looking at a 4-5, then we just will focus on those designs and those schemes. If we're looking at 3-4-5, we'll focus on those schemes too. So it's pretty important. And then coming up after that would be the site location. And Anime, I don't have it right in front of me. The site location vote for SBC would be in September, and that's not a vote the school committee does, that's a vote that the school building committee does on a site location. So that would be either Dale Street or the Wheelock site, and that will trim down the number of schemes even more. So right now we have multiple schemes at both sites and multiple schemes with different grade configurations. This will really allow us to hone in on what we're looking at for a future school, and we'll submit that to MSBA in October, and then attend MSBA meeting in which they'll look at our materials, either vote to support it or not in December. So it's still moving along. We did, you know, this was supposed to be done a long time ago, you know, a few weeks ago or months ago, but since COVID-19, we, as you know, thought it was a smart move to kind of take a step back on that and get some more information from people. I know that the grade configuration seems like it's been on the agenda for months now. We've talked about it a zillion times, so we'll allow one more time, I guess, and then we'll go forward.
Did you want to add anything to the Dale Street process?
Oh, I summed it right up.
Yep. All right, great. School reopening, we discussed that, and the next item is FY21 budget.
So I never like to say anything in a public meeting unless I see it in writing. So we did get some good news in FY21. So as part of the CARES Act money, the governor is allocating money to school districts, and we'll be getting $225 per student to help with reopening costs. So that should come right around about $500,000 for us, which is great. So we're looking at, it's going to be in a grant program. So Michael had a meeting on it today, and then the grant will come to us. We'll fill out the grant. We just don't know what the parameters are and what the earmarks are. So we have to wait to see what we can spend that on. It was a general reopening. We also need to know whether or not we can carry that over another fiscal year. So we're not sure about that. All the details are coming out. They were supposed to be coming out this week, so that means it'll be next week. We'll get those details, but that's real good news. There's also whispers of a fourth federal stimulus plan that could come out at the end of August. That would really help municipalities and school districts. So hopefully it's going to take the same type of model that it took in 08 and 09, in which the money really filled the gap that was left by Chapter 70. So we're waiting to see if that comes to fruition or not. But I'm not planning on that until I see it in writing. And it's great to know that we're going to get the CARES Act money, though, directly to us in that grant. So there'll be more information on that at the next meeting, because I think we'll have the grant application that we fill out, and we will submit that probably prior to the next meeting. So good news there. We haven't had good news in FY21 for a long time, so we'll take it. Also, just news around when we should get a state budget. I heard today that it may not be until September, October until we get actual numbers for Chapter 70. So the actual federal stimulus might come before our Chapter 70 allocation. So we'll see what happens.
All right, our next meeting is July 30th, where again, we'll have the mascot logo public forum. Any closing statements? Actually, Andrew, how are you?
I'm good.
It's so nice to see you again. Thank you. You're right back in the middle of summer, so thank you again for joining us. Do you have any comments? I mean, this is so overwhelming. You're going to be a senior, and I'm just wondering, how are you feeling with all this?
Yeah, pretty much where I'm at right now is just like, I understand there's a lot of like things flying around with like the medical guidelines from the CDC and the state. Obviously, I'm pulling for school reopening, but I know there's a lot more factors that kind of go into that rather than just what I want.
You and I both, Andrew.
I'm sorry?
You and I both pulling for that.
Yeah, and like we held a socially distant captain's practice today for cross country, and like, the entire time we were just talking about like whether or not we're going to be able to even have a season. So just stuff like that. I'm still like working on all my summer work and stuff, assuming that school is going to start normally on, I think, what is it, September or something, September 1st or 2nd. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm at right now. I don't know, it's just kind of a boring summer considering that I'm pretty much on house arrest. So
Andrew, can you just briefly explain to many of the audience members here who I know don't necessarily have kids who are old enough to be in high school what summer work is?
Yeah. So for me, I'm taking an AP Lit class. So I have to read 2 books, which are Catch-22 and 1984. And then I have to write essays kind of based off of those 2 pieces of work.
So in the high school, there's, for certain classes, usually just AP. It's
AP and honors
to kind of prep you into that.
Yeah, AP and honors usually. That's,
I just wanted to make sure people weren't freaking out that we're like, what? I didn't get the summer work. What are you talking about?
Yeah, and even with like college applications and stuff, like starting to work on essays, and even standardized testing. Like we don't know if we're gonna have SATs like normally would, because we look at state like Florida, and they're having like a huge outbreak right now, and the SAT is like nationwide, so they can't administer a test in Massachusetts and not Florida, you know, so it'd be unfair to those kids down there. So there's just a lot of moving parts right now, and it's kind of stressful, even though I'm kind of have to like sit on my hands and we can't do anything about it. So
Yeah. I think we all feel that way in a lot of ways, but probably more intensely when you're gearing up to do this significant transition.
Yeah.
You don't even know if that transition will be just mental and emotional or if you're actually going to be able to get to go somewhere at a certain point, you know, like next year, what that will look like for you. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Andrew. Thank you. Thank you. Anyone else have anything to say?
Just looking forward to our graduation on Saturday the 25th for our seniors. Real happy for all of them. I know I've told all of you, but I really haven't told many people that my son's school changed their graduation to the exact same time as Medfield's graduation. So I unfortunately will not be at the Medfield graduation for the first time, but I am going to send a message to all of our seniors, and I'm just real proud of how they've handled themselves these last 4 months, and wish them all the best. So.
Indeed.
You just ruined our plan to dress Tim up like you and have you just record it and have him move his hands.
I actually ran into one of the seniors and was talking to him about it, and he said, "Oh, don't worry about it. It'll be electric. Just give me your speech and I'll go up and do it." I said, "I'll pass on that though." I love the spunk.
Exactly. Well, super. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Motion by Jess, so seconded by Tim. But before we take that final roll call, I want to thank everyone who joined us this evening and participated. Thank you very much. So roll call. Jess Reilly.
Here. Yes.
All of the above. Leo.
Aye.
Tim Knight.
Aye.
Megan Glenn in Michigan. Remote.
Aye.
Aye. All righty. Good night. We'll see you on the 30th.
And Bonnie Wren Burgess, the top was 99 participants. Is that right? She always
100.
has 100.
I saw 100. Yeah.
That one's for you, Devani. Okay.
Thank
Good
you.
night.
Folks.
Thank you.
Ciao. Good night. Thank you, Andrew.